Very good evening to you. Welcome to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. Long time no see. This is all a bit of a fudge, isn't it? I mean, he's talking about a description of extremism which nobody seemingly can agree is either right or wrong. So what are we to do?
Well, I think, Mike, the definition has major flaws. I think that there's many people who, in my view, would have perfectly legitimate views rooted in social conservatism who may be dragged into this. That would include gender critical feminists, people who may have very conservative views on marriage, ultimately believing that is between a man and a woman, and I think even those who may have conservative views inspired by their faith when it comes to issues such as abortion, they may be potentially dragged into this because they may be accused of being anti-trans, anti-LGBT. So I think that it's a poorly crafted definition. It's expansive, and I think actually it's bizarre that we're seeing this under a conservative government, because I think this could be a gift for what I call radical liberal authoritarians in the public
Mm.
sector who will be empowered under a future Labour government.
Yeah, because in the end, whether they mention violence or not, it's really all about what you
Mm,
think extremism is, isn't it? And whether I think something's extreme might not
absolutely.
be the same as what you think. And whether Keir Starmer thinks something else is extreme, you know, it could
Exactly.
change literally every month. And the police are even more confused now already.
Absolutely. And that's the whole point. That people's perceptions on what constitutes extremism is hugely subjective. I think the focus, and we have existing laws in place in order to take robust action when there's targeted forms of violence, intimidation, and harassment by
Yeah.
extremists. I think that's what we need to be focusing on. I think there's serious issues when it comes to enforcement, and I think creating these kind of risky definitions, I think they may actually do more harm than good, especially when it comes to preserving and consolidating our liberal parliamentary democracy.
Right. Well, we've seen, haven't we, already different interpretations of things that are
Mm,
chanted, things that are shouted. You know, we've already had the police explain to us that jihad doesn't always mean a holy war. It might just mean people want to be good Muslims, even though they're chanting it on a march, which appears to be pretty anti-Semitic. They seemingly don't wish to make people think that they're wrong to shout from the river to the sea, but it's okay if they want to put it up on Parliament. But if you say it in a private room, it might be an offence. You know, they're all over the place. So, I mean, this doesn't really clear any of that up, does it?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be in the business of taking Islamic religious teachings from the Metropolitan Police Service, Mike. Put it that way. But I think we just need to stick to the bread and butter when it comes to if people are breaking the law. For example, if they're expressing support for a prescribed terrorist organization, irrespective of one's views on that particular organization, if it's prescribed by the Home Office, then that is unlawful activity. For me, I think that we have those existing laws in place for law enforcement to take action when it sees those forms of unlawful activities in the public space. But I think this new definition of extremism, and Michael Gove, he named a number of organizations during his common statement. I think the danger there is if he didn't mention a particular organization, even though they might have very questionable radical views, they may think, oh, we're in the clear then. So I think that it's been a very difficult day for Michael Gove, and I don't think it's gone according to plan.
Right. And so do you see this ever becoming a law, a new law, ever coming in?
Well, I certainly hope not, Mike, because it's so badly designed. I think it can be argued that this is ultimately a guide for ministers and civil servants. This is who you should engage with. Perhaps you shouldn't engage with this particular organization. But once again, Mike, is the point that you made before, that it's hugely subjective.
Mm.
Now, people may look at this definition and think, if there's a pro-family organization that may have socially conservative views, this may trample on other people's democratic rights, so we won't engage with them. Maybe a high-ranking a civil servant who's quite socially liberal, they may take that view. So I think that overall, what this definition does is potentially more harm than good. I think that it's also it poses a threat to freedom of assembly and also freedom of expression. So I think if we're talking about protecting parliamentary democracy, freedom of expression, and ultimately allowing people to express legitimate grievances and concerns needs to be part of that contract.
Yeah, right. And presumably, if some of these organisations, many of which have been advising government departments and police
Mm.
organisations throughout the country on various different moments in time over the past 10 or so years, if they get prescribed as some kind of extremist group that nobody can talk to, presumably they'll just form another group and wait for them to be prescribed as an extremist group later.
Well, I think that this what that shows is that there's limitations when it comes to banning organizations. I think the fight against extremism, extremist ideologies, involves counter ideologies, but providing something for people who may be drawn into extremist ideologies at risk of radicalization. You need to give them something uplifting and wholesome to attach themselves to, so sort of a counter ideology, so to speak. And I think in the UK we're quite weak in that, actually. And on top of that, we have a very weak integration. We don't even have a national integration program, which is which is a problem in itself. So I think ultimately, it's back to the drawing board for the government. Really, I think the definition does more harm than good. And actually, for the Conservative government, it may actually empower those very problematic public sector officials that they often talk about and complain about. It may actually help them.
Yeah, absolutely. Rakib, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed, Dr. Rakib Ehsan there. Let me